The FDA just launched a bold plan to slash drug approval times, and it could fast-track the next wave of GLP-1s. Plus, a massive new study suggests these meds might ease fibromyalgia symptoms, too.
Welcome to the Downsized News. It's Monday, June 23rd, and we've got the latest on everything GLP-1. I'm Laraine Durham, and I've lost over 50 pounds on tirzepatide.
And I'm Christopher Durham. I'm down 100 pounds thanks to GLP-1s, and today we're talking about the meds that are changing lives. We're covering Mounjaro, Zepbound, Wegovy, Ozempic, Semaglutide, tirzepatide, plus what's coming next, new research, new drugs, legislation, and what it all means for real people like us.
A quick reminder before we jump in, we're not doctors. We're just sharing what's worked for us and what we're learning along the way. Always check with your doctor or healthcare provider before starting or changing any treatment. And if you're new to our channel or find this helpful, please hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notifications so you don't miss what's next.
A lot is happening this week, so let's get straight to the news and break down what it means for those of us using GLP-1s to treat the disease of obesity.
In story number one, we covered this in detail last week during our Downsized Live, but here's the quick recap. A federal judge ruled in favor of the FDA and Novo Nordisk officially ending 503B compounding for semaglutide. The court backed the FDA's authority to remove Ozempic and Wegovy from the drug shortage list and rejected every argument made by the Outsourcing Facilities Association. The judge even called out what he described as a pattern of repeated factual mistakes in their case. This ruling closely mirrors what the same judge decided earlier this year in the tirzepatide case. In both cases, the court ruled that the FDA acted legally and rationally and therefore didn't need to solicit public comments. That's two big wins for the FDA and a serious warning for anyone still compounding at scale. And right as the ruling dropped, Novo Nordisk rolled out a limited-time $199 cash price for Wegovy. That offer runs through June 30th. After that, the price jumps back to $4.99 unless they decide to make it permanent. If you missed our full breakdown, go back and watch last week's Downsized Live. We went through the entire court document, shared quotes, talked about what this means for access and why we're calling on Novo Nordisk to be the hero here. Not just for a month, but for good.
Story number two. This week, FDA Commissioner Martin Makary unveiled a bold new pilot program that could cut drug approval times down to just 1 to 2 months, but only for products tied to what the agency defines as national interests. The program is called the Commissioner's National Priority Voucher, or CNPV. It's designed to fast-track drugs that address public health crises, deliver innovative cures, or help rebuild the United States drug manufacturing base. Here's how it works. Companies have to submit most of their application, things like manufacturing data and draft labeling, at least 60 days prior to their final results. If they qualify, they'll get a voucher for a lightning-fast FDA review. It's not for sale, and it only applies to one specific drug. But if the FDA signs off, it could mean new treatments hit the market in weeks, not years. Makary compared the process to a tumor board, a multidisciplinary team reviewing a case together in real time to make a decision quickly and collaboratively. It's an effort to shift away from the siloed, slow-moving process we've seen for decades. The FDA says these vouchers can be assigned to a specific product or issued as a flexible, undesignated voucher a company can use later, so long as it still fits the program's priorities. The review time could be cut from the standard 10 months or even the current 6-month priority review down to just 30 to 60 days. And in some cases, these drugs could qualify for accelerated approval as well. Makary says this program is also about improving communication. One of the most common complaints the FDA heard during recent listening sessions was that simple questions from drug developers can go unanswered for weeks or months. Under this pilot, companies would get more direct access to reviewers, potentially cutting out months of guesswork with just a 15-minute conversation. So why does this matter for GLP-1 users? Well, with 74% of American adults living with overweight or obesity, this is not just a public health issue, it's arguably a national security concern. The economic costs, the healthcare burden, and the human toll are enormous. If GLP-1 therapies or next-generation versions are considered part of this national interest framework, they could become eligible for faster FDA decisions under this program. And this has the potential to dramatically accelerate speed to market for the exciting roster of new obesity medications currently in development, including orforglipron, CagriSema, survodutide, retatrutide, and amondlunabant.
That's a lot.
And there's a whole lot more coming. That could mean more options sooner for the millions of Americans treating the disease of obesity. So, move a little bit faster. It can't be a bad thing.
Faster obesity medications to market, sure.
Yeah.
In story number 3, GLP-1 medications may help people with fibromyalgia. That's the takeaway from a new study presented this week at the European Alliance of Associations for Rheumatology in Barcelona. Dr. Nuran Ishak, a Mayo Clinic fellow, started the research after seeing posts on TikTok. People with fibromyalgia were saying that GLP-1 drugs didn't just help with their weight, they also eased their pain, fatigue, and inflammation. That led her to ask a simple question: is this real? To find out, she turned to TriNetX, a huge database of medical records from 104 healthcare systems. Her team looked at over 760,000 people with fibromyalgia. Here's how the study broke down. 46,409 people had used a GLP-1 medication at least twice. 716,185 had not used any GLP-1s. The team matched approximately 38,000 users to 38,000 non-users with similar age, sex, health issues, and medication use. Then they followed both groups for 5 years to compare outcomes. The GLP-1 medications included were Semaglutide, which is Ozempic and Wegovy, Tirzepatide, which is Mounjaro and Zepbound, Liraglutide, which is Saxenda and Victoza, Exenatide, which is Bydureon and Byetta, and Duraglutide, which is Trulicity. Here's what they found after 5 years. Fatigue and malaise were found in 21% of GLP-1 users versus 32% of non-users. Pain was found in 34% of GLP-1 users versus 43% of non-users. Ongoing fibromyalgia care was found in 39% of GLP-1 users versus 55% of non-users. Disability, which is the Z73.6 code, rare in both groups, just 0.1%. The people who took GLP-1s started with higher average BMI and A1C levels. That was still true 5 years later, but the study didn't track how long patients stayed on the drug, and it didn't measure how bad their symptoms were to begin with. Even with those limits, the results are striking. Fewer symptoms, less pain, and less need for ongoing care. We already know GLP-1s do more than help with weight. They affect inflammation, metabolism, and brain signals that relate to pain. Other studies have shown benefits in migraine, IBS, arthritis, and even mood disorders. And just 2 months ago, a preclinical study showed that semaglutide reduced pain and inflammation in a rat model of fibromyalgia. Dr. Ishak says we still need randomized trials, but for fibromyalgia patients who also have obesity, type 2 diabetes, or sleep apnea, it's pretty much a no-brainer. GLP-1 drugs may offer real relief. And since those are approved uses, access might be easier. It's more evidence that these medications are changing far more than just the number on the scale.
I mean, it's just every day there's something else. So
Fibromyalgia it seems to help with. So that's good news.
That's a very good thing. Story number 4, a new GLP-1 drug out of South Korea is showing big potential, not just for weight loss, but for liver health too. The biotech company D&D Pharmatech just released 12-week results from a phase 2 trial of their once-a-week injectable DD-01. It's a dual GLP-1 and glucagon receptor agonist being studied in people with MASH, a liver disease that used to be called NASH. It's closely tied to obesity and metabolic dysfunction, and it's notoriously hard to treat. In this trial, which was a small trial, 67 people with overweight or obesity and confirmed MASH were randomized to get either a DDO-1 or a placebo. The results were pretty striking. After 12 weeks, 76% of people on DDO-1 saw at least a 30% reduction in liver fat. 73% cut their liver fat by more than half, 58% reduced liver fat by over 70%, and 49% fully normalized their liver fat levels, meaning their liver fat dropped to under 5%. That's a big deal. Not a single person in the placebo group reached that mark. They also tracked weight loss. While the placebo group stayed the same, 42% of the people on DDO-1 lost more than 5% of their body weight in just 12 weeks. That's in line with what we're seeing from other GLP-1s, but it's notable given how fast the response was. There was also measurable improvements in the HbA1c, even though this wasn't a diabetes study. And there were significant reductions in liver stiffness and other non-invasive markers of disease progression. As for side effects, the most common were what you'd expect. They were GI-related, mild to moderate nausea, mostly, and only 3 people dropped out because of it. What makes DDO-1 different is how it works. It's not just a GLP-1. It also activates the glucagon receptor, which may be helping it hit the liver more directly. The company says the drug doesn't need a long titration period either. The low absorption and long half-life, around 7 to 8 days, make it easier to tolerate and keep drug levels more stable. This isn't just another weight loss drug. If DDO-1 continues to show results like this, it could become a real option for people with liver disease tied to obesity. MASH is extremely common, especially in people with overweight or obesity, and until now, there haven't been any good treatment options. The FDA has already given DDO-1 fast track status. The full trial runs 48 weeks, so we'll see more data in the months ahead, including whether it can actually reverse liver fibrosis. Bottom line, this is a small study, but it's a strong signal. GLP-1s are already changing obesity treatment. DDO-1 is one more sign they could reshape liver care too. So it's remarkably similar to tirzepatide, but not tirzepatide, and they're testing it on something they think they can get it approved for insurance for.
I mean, the results were dramatic. What was it? Half of the patients reduced their liver disease to normal levels. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty significant. I mean, it was a small study, but very significant.
I don't know enough science, and perhaps our friend Condi Carmack, the molecular biologist, could tell me. This is basically a GLP-1 and a GIP, which is what tirzepatide is, but it has a longer half-life. So it had a 7 to 8 day half-life. So what are they doing different in this in Korea?
Different molecule
I don't know.
Chain. I
don't have no
enough
idea.
medical knowledge to know how to break that down.
But that little bit could be interesting. I mean, it could. Every extra day of half-life, I think, would be a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Novo Nordisk has officially announced that Saxenda, their once-daily injectable liraglutide for weight loss, will be discontinued in Australia. Supplies will run out by the end of December 2025, and after that it won't be available for purchase. Saxenda holds an important place in history. It was first approved by the FDA in the U.S. on December 23, 2014 as the first GLP-1 medication specifically indicated for chronic weight management in adults. Approved in Australia in 2015, this daily injectable helped many patients shed around 5 to 10% of their body weight, though its modest results and frequent dosing have since been surpassed by newer options. According to Novo, this decision in Australia is part of a broader shift to prioritize Wegovy, their once-weekly semaglutide injection. And it's not just marketing. Wegovy outperformed Saxenda in the Step 8 study, with users losing an average of 17% of body weight compared to 7% for those on Saxenda. GI side effects affected over 80% in both groups. For Australians currently using Saxenda, this means it's time to talk to your doctor about switching to Wegovy. But note, neither medication is listed on the pharmaceutical benefit scheme, meaning out-of-pocket costs remain significant for Australians. This move reflects a global trend in GLP-1 therapy. Older daily injectables like Saxenda are being phased out in favor of more effective weekly treatments. However, with access and affordability still a hurdle, especially for those paying full price, we'll continue to track how these shifts affect real people, not just pharma strategy.
So did you take Saxenda? Did you tried Saxenda?
I did. I think it was around 2015.
So it must have been fresh out then.
Yeah, I was very active in our girls' elementary school, and several of the teachers there had been losing weight on Saxenda, and I asked them what they were doing, and they said, oh, you got to go to this doctor and get this new weight loss drug. And so I tried it for a few months. I didn't really lose a significant amount of weight. Maybe I didn't stick with it long enough, but I didn't like the daily injections.
So we have plenty of viewers in Australia. If this impacts you, leave a note in the comments and let us know what you think. Story number 6, news on a new drug from Zealand Pharma. In a 28-week phase 1b study, people taking Dapiglutide lost an average of 11.6% of their body weight. That's without any lifestyle changes, no diet plan, no exercise protocol. The placebo group, by comparison, lost just 0.2%. Wah wah. What makes this drug different is that it's a dual GLP-1, GLP-2 receptor agonist. That means it works on two fronts. The GLP-1 side helps with weight loss and appetite regulation, similar to drugs like Zepbound or Wegovy. The GLP-2 component, though, may help repair the intestinal lining and reduce low-grade inflammation, which is increasingly seen as a driver of obesity-related health issues. The trial enrolled 30 participants, 93% were men, with a median BMI of 28.8, so this was not a group with severe obesity. Despite that, the weight loss was on par with the strongest GLP-1s on the market today. Safety-wise, the drug was well tolerated. There were no serious adverse events. The most common side effects were mild gastrointestinal issues like nausea or vomiting, consistent with what we see across the GLP-1 class. 2 people withdrew due to side effects, one of them due to GI symptoms. And again, this was a very small study. Also seemed like it was almost all men. I'm not sure why you'd do that.
Indeed.
But it's the first sign that dapiglutide might do more than just lower the number of the scale. If the dual mechanism proves effective in larger trials, this drug could be especially helpful for people with obesity-related conditions linked to inflammation like fatty liver disease or cardiovascular risk tied to gut dysfunction. Zealand Pharma also has another candidate in development called petrelintide, an amylin analog they say could eventually serve as a base therapy for long-term weight management. Both drugs are still in early development, but we'll keep tracking them not just for weight loss potential, but for how they might change the conversation around what obesity treatment can actually address. They're another competitor for the Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly's, and we could certainly use a few more of those.
Yeah, for sure. In story number 7, this week Wired magazine published an early look at a new experimental obesity pill, and it could eventually offer an alternative or add-on to GLP-1 medications. The drug is called Sana, and it's being developed by a company out of Uruguay called Elo Pharma. Unlike GLP-1s like Zepbound, Mounjaro, Wegovy, and Ozempic, which work by reducing appetite and slowing digestion, Sana takes a completely different approach. It doesn't suppress appetite. Instead, it aims to burn fat directly by activating something called creatine-dependent thermogenesis. That's a fancy way of saying it helps fat cells generate heat and burn energy, using a pathway the body naturally relies on when exposed to cold. It's based on decades-old research around creatine, the same compound bodybuilders use to build muscle. But in this case, it's being used to help convert white fat into heat-producing tissue. In a small phase 1 study shared in Nature Metabolism, first reported by Wired, Sana led to an average 3% weight loss in just 15 days at the highest dose, with no reported changes in appetite or satiety. That's similar to what we've seen with GLP-1s over a comparable time period, but without acting on the brain's hunger signals. The study was small, just 24 participants with obesity, randomized into placebo and low, medium, and high dose groups. Everyone stayed in a controlled facility, ate high-carb meals, and took the drug twice daily. There were no serious side effects, and people tolerated the drug well at all doses. What's also interesting is that in animal studies, Sana preserved lean muscle mass even as body weight dropped. And that's a big deal for those of us who have had to fight to keep muscle while losing fat on a GLP-1. Originally, ELO was targeting inflammation related to obesity and type 2 diabetes, but the weight loss effects turned out to be strong enough that they've now shifted focus. The company says they're planning a phase 2 trial later this year with around 100 participants, likely in the U.S. ELO's CEO says they believe this could eventually be used on its own or in combination with GLP-1s. And Angela Fitch, former president of the Obesity Medicine Association, told Wired that this kind of research is exactly what's needed, because we're still missing tools that go beyond appetite regulation. Her quote stuck with us. Right now, we are bringing a backhoe to the construction site when we need many more tools. If Santa continues to prove safe and effective, it could eventually become another one of those tools, especially for people who can't tolerate GLP-1s or who hit a plateau. We'll keep tracking this one, and as always, we'll share what we learn right here.
So
Sign me up.
I mean, it sounds kind of like science fiction, right?
You take a pill and it burns fat? Okay. And there's no downside, there's no GI side effects, and it works almost as well as a GIP?
I mean, I think your problem is all that other stuff, the food noise and all that stuff isn't going to go away.
Well, it was a small study. What was it, 24 people?
Yep.
And probably half of them were placebo, and then they divided the non-placebo into 3 groups, and they controlled what they ate.
High carb.
And they ate high carb.
Which would scare the heck out of, I'm sure, a lot of you guys out there.
Right. So, it's really hard. I've heard other researchers talk about studies like this, and it's really hard to control what people eat in the real world because people either don't recall accurately what they've ate or they lie about what they've ate to please the researchers. So if they're going to have now 100 people in a further trial, are they going to keep those people in a controlled environment too and feed them, or are they going to allow them to live their lives and take this drug? Either way, it has some exciting possibilities.
I mean, to me, the more interesting thing is a combination therapy. So could I combine that with tirzepatide, maybe this at a smaller dose, and it focuses on burning the fat and protects some of that muscle?
Or people who reach plateaus.
Oh, yeah, a little boost. That'd be good.
That'd be great.
Story number 8. Seems like I have to talk about this every week. Before we get into this next story, I want to be clear, we're not a political channel. We're here to talk about access, affordability, and treatment for people using GLP-1s and living with obesity. Sometimes that means covering policy decisions or government actions, but our focus is always on how those choices affect patients. We know topics like this can stir up strong opinions, but let's not let the comments turn into a political battle. We are battling the disease of obesity, not each other. Let's keep the conversation focused, respectful, and supportive, and let's talk about GLP-1s. Now, with that said, here's what's happening. This story stood out to me because if you've been treating obesity with a GLP-1, you've probably noticed the TV ads. They're constant. Zepbound, Mounjaro, Ozempic, Wegovy. Their songs, they get stuck in your heads like earworms. They're dancing. I don't know why the fat people are always dancing, but they are. You can't watch a show without hearing about one of them, but that may be changing. We reported last week on some of this. This is an update to it. So HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy is reportedly working on 2 new policies that could seriously disrupt how drug companies advertise on television. One would require more detailed risk disclosures in drug ads, making them longer and more expensive to run. So I mean, some of the pundits were saying they could add another 30 seconds of disclosures. So it'd be a really expensive ad.
Don't take Wegovy if you are allergic to Wegovy.
Yeah, well, a lot longer than that. The other would eliminate the tax deduction drug makers currently take for advertising expenses. So those millions that we reported on last week
could not be a tax deduction.
Yeah. Well, it would not be in this case. It's not a ban on advertising, however, but it's a direct financial hit. So they're trying to de-incentivize. Drug makers spent more than $5 billion on TV ads. This past year, nearly half of that went to cable news networks. These ads aren't just background noise. They're a major source of revenue, and there's little doubt that the billions spent are adding to the high price of drugs in the United States. That cost doesn't disappear. It gets passed on to patients, especially those of us paying out of pocket. We reported on a similar push last week from Senators Bernie Sanders and Angus King introducing a bill that would ban drug advertising to consumers entirely, just get rid of it. Kennedy's approach might be more tactical, but the end game is the same: take on an ad-driven system that prioritizes sales over substance. He's been a longtime critic of direct-to-consumer ads, arguing they lead to over-prescribing and confusion. The U.S. and New Zealand are the only 2 countries in the world that allow this kind of advertising. Everyone else has already walked away. Either way, the message is clear. Between the Sanders-King legislation and Kennedy's proposed policies, the drug ad era in America is under serious pressure, and it might finally be heading toward a much-needed reckoning. And for those of us using GLP-1s, this matters. These ads don't just market medications. They shape public perception, influence doctors, and drive demand. What happens next could impact how people access these treatments, what they cost, and how seriously the country takes obesity care going forward.
I'm for advertising. I think you're against
I am,
advertising.
definitely against it. Well, this is adding regulation and saying, well, if you're going to do it, you have to have a lot more caveats on it, right?
Okay. Well,
And
I
you
don't
can't
care.
write it off as a tax.
Business expense. I guess corporations don't technically pay taxes, but I guess it affects their bottom line profits.
Story number 9, Lorraine.
We've got a big headline out of Eli Lilly this week, one that may not look like it's about obesity treatment on the surface, but it absolutely is, and it could shape the future for anyone treating obesity with a GLP-1 today. Lilly just announced it's acquiring Verve Therapeutics, a biotech company developing one-time gene editing treatments for cardiovascular disease. The deal is worth up to $1.3 billion and centers around a pipeline of therapies that aim to permanently lower cholesterol and heart risk with a single dose. Now, you might be asking, what does this have to do with those of us on GLP-1s? The answer is a lot. Nearly 3 out of 4 Americans have overweight or obesity, and one of the leading causes of death in that group isn't the weight itself, it's the cardiovascular disease that comes with it. Even when you lose weight on Zepbound, Mounjaro, or Wegovy, that heart disease risk can linger. And once you stop the medication, some of that protection fades. That's where work comes in. Their lead therapy, Verve 102, targets a gene called PC, which regulates LDL cholesterol. By editing this gene, the goal is to permanently reduce cholesterol and cut the risk of heart attacks and strokes with just one dose. Lilly already dominates the GLP-1 space. This move shows thinking beyond weekly injections toward a future where treating obesity might mean a short-term medication followed by a long-term solution. Because here's the thing, GLP-1s and the current generation of obesity medications are powerful treatments, but they are not cures. What Verve is working on could be the first step toward a true cure for one of the most dangerous complications of obesity. And the question becomes, could this same technology someday be applied to obesity itself? Not just to manage it, but to cure it. We're not there yet, but this deal is one more sign that the future of obesity treatment may look very different than what it looks like today. And we'll be here to talk about it every step of the way.
So what do you think of this gene editing?
Sounds like science fiction.
It does.
But cool. I mean, with one shot, you eliminate your cardiovascular disease. Boom, done. Okay. Maybe someday we can take one shot and boom.
Might not even be a shot, it'd be a pill. I don't know how it's delivered.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's gene editing, so I don't know how that works at all. But
it's one of those simultaneously exciting and terrifying things.
Right.
I don't know. Can they make me Superman? Can I fly? Edit some
no,
genes.
They can't.
Probably not. Hair growth would also be a good thing. Is there a gene you can turn on here?
Can I turn on a gene so I don't have to dye my hair anymore? It's permanently blonde.
That'd be cool.
That'd be cool.
Now, there's those cars out there that are like touch button cars that change colors themselves. You seen those?
No.
Yeah, it's super cool. All right. Well, that's it for this edition of the Downsized News. We hope today's updates provide you with something useful for your GLP-1 journey.
And if you're looking for tools that make this easier, head on over to thedownsized.org. That's where our Amazon store is and where we've curated the products that have helped us the most.
We built that store because we remember what it was like in the beginning, trying to figure out what helped and what was a waste of money. Everything is personally curated by us for GLP-1 users by GLP-1 users.
We are Amazon affiliates, so when you shop through our store, it helps support our channel at no extra cost to you, and we appreciate it.
If you've been following our story, more than 150 pounds lost between us, and you want real updates, honest advice, and GLP-1 news that matters,
make sure to like this video, subscribe, share it with a friend, and tap that notification bell so you never miss what's coming out next. I'm Laraine Durham.
And I'm Christopher Durham, and we are the Downsized. See you next week.